my people, and if you're watching live, checking us out on YouTube, or listening on your favorite podcast provider, you are most definitely my people. Welcome to another episode of Botched, and Share Shots. I am your host, a chef by trade and a mark by choice. I am the Will Gray, and joining me tonight is a superstar tearing up the American Southeast. He is a member of the Exotic Youth. He is the Frat Daddy Bryce Cannon. Bryce, how are you?
Doing well. I'd much rather have a hard seltzer right now, but can't complain.
I feel like the figurative phrase is it's 5 o'clock somewhere, right?
Oh yeah, it's 6 o'clock now, so it's way past happy hour.
Yeah, I literally looked at the clock. It said 5:04. I was like, look, it's plenty okay in my opinion to crack one open then. So we were kind of chatting off air. I start all of these kind of the same two-part question. Everybody who's in pro wrestling kind of has a different story with part one, how they fell in love with wrestling as a fan, what they were exposed to, and then kind of use that as your jumping off point to kind of go into where you're trained, what you had been doing, and how you got into the actual business of pro wrestling.
Yeah, so I think my story is pretty much like full circle. So both of those questions actually get answered with how I fell in love with pro wrestling. So wrestling has honestly always been a part of my life. Ever since I can remember, wrestling has been a part of it. Always, have gone to indie shows as a kid. I didn't know they were indies at the time. For me, I thought, oh, I'm watching the big guys. I'm watching these cool guys. But honestly, I mean, it all started with my granddad taking me to indie shows. I grew up in Warner Robins, Georgia. I'm glad I got out of there, but there was a little place called Fort Valley, Georgia, right down the road, about 15 minutes away. And so there was a promotion called AWN, All-Star Wrestling Network. And so we would go there every Friday night because they ran weekly back then. And so we would go every Friday night. And they had guys mimic like the Undertaker. His name was the Underfaker. Came out to the Undertaker's music. Lights would go off, the whole shebang. And I remember as a kid just like watching that, like, wow, like, this is awesome, but also like being petrified because I knew Undertaker from TV, so I was scared to death. So that was kind of cool just to see. But realistically, I mean, wrestling has been a part of my life. And I got asked a question on a podcast once before, like, what's my first memory of wrestling? Or like WWE, at least. That was the question. What was my first WWE memory? And it was like WrestleMania 24, the Money in the Bank ladder match where John Morrison grabbed the ladder and did the moonsault from the top turnbuckle onto like a pile of guys. And after I got off of that podcast, I started to think, and I was like, that's like my first memory of wrestling, but I know for certain that wasn't my first like time seeing wrestling or watching it. Just for some reason, that moment of John Morrison doing that moonsault is what clicked with me and kind of just resonated as, okay, when I think of what's my first memory, that's what pops up, and I'm not sure why. But yeah, I mean, it just intrigued me. It grabbed me. It gave me an escape. I was always that little kid who had the action figures. I had the entranceway. I had the wrestling, ring set. I had a commentary table. I had it all. And I just remember sitting in my living room for hours on end until it was time to either eat dinner or go to bed. I was down there just creating my own show. And so fast forward to graduating high school, AWN had closed and had just opened back up. I had no idea who still wrestled there, if anybody at all. And so what I did was I asked a buddy of mine, like, hey, you want to go to like this wrestling program? Like, they used to be around when like my granddad would take us as kids. And so I went, and wrestling was always one of those things where I thought, it would be super cool to do, but you'll never get the chance to do it. Like, it's like saying you want to be a Superman or something. It's a cool idea on paper, but you'll never get that opportunity to do that.
A lot of times it's like people saying they want to be NFL players or something, right? It's kind
right,
of like,
exactly. It just happens by happenstance. So So we went to the wrestling show, and halfway through the show, a guy comes out, and I'm like, wait a second, I went to high school with him. And so after the show, I text him like, hey man, like, how did you get into it? Like, no offense, but if I see you doing it, I know I can do it. And so he texts me, he goes, meet me up here on Sunday. I'm like, okay, that's kind of sketchy, but you know, if you know pro wrestling, or at least indie wrestling, if the sketchier, the more true it's going to be and legit. So me and my dad, funny story enough, we ran a 5K, and it was a themed one. It was a donut 5K. So Krispy Kreme had a half dozen donuts at the halfway point. You had to eat them and then run the other half. So I didn't eat mine. I gave them to my dad. And so we finished that, and I'm like, well, I guess I got to go home and change and go to this wrestling thing. So I met up with another buddy of mine, and he said, you know, I want to see this. I want to watch you do this. So we went, took my first bump, fell in love, and the guy said, all right, you learned how to bump. Now here's a chair shot. And I was like, I don't think that's going to escalate things a little bit. So um, I ended up going back to an AWN show and going up to the concession stand and asking, you know, like, hey, is there anywhere like around here that does it professionally? And turns out like multiple people had the keys to the building, and they trained at a different time on Sunday. And so they gave me the contact, and it was Marvelous Michael Stevens. He's another Southeast guy. He's had an AEW Dark appearance, works a lot on WWE as an extra talent. Some people know him as Sam Smothers, or you know, his who was it? Veer Mahan, you know, destroyed him on the announce table. Now that's the guy who trained me. I'll give him the credit. But I mean, I've trained with several Rock and Roll Express. I've trained with them. I've trained with Doc Gallows. I've trained with several names. So, but yeah, so I mean, that's just kind of how it happened. You know, the building that I went to as a kid ended up being you know, the foundation of my indie wrestling career.
So I'm curious about this one. You mentioned rock and roll, and you mentioned Doc Gallows, and you mentioned your other trainer. So when you look at all three of those, so when you work with rock and roll, they're notorious for being, well, not notorious. They're famous for being one of the best working tag teams in history. The way they work their matches, super traditional, calling it in the ring. Doc Gallows is, you know, one of those guys, from my perspective, you know, is kind of the 50-50%. You know, he's kind of bridged that gap with sports entertainment and pro wrestling, and then some of the more modern stuff. When you're training with so many people and so many names, are you just picking and choosing the little pieces that make Bryce Cannon Bryce Cannon? Are you like a sponge and you're just taking all the best parts of each one?
Yeah, I think what it is being open and being coachable and just learning. It's not about taking it all in, because that's hard to do. If you try to take it all in, you're going to overthink and then hurt somebody, in my opinion. Um, so, like for instance, training at Robert Gibson School, um, he was a lot of basics. Basics are key with him.
Fundamentals.
I remember him critiquing like my arm drags, like, no kid, this is how you do it, like, you know, and just showing me how to do that. And I remember giving guys their arm drags and arm drags and arm drags until, you know, Robert approved. And so it's just little stuff like that. Like, I mean, and by that time I was already a year or two in the business, and he was critiquing my arm drags. But instead of saying, "Oh, this old man doesn't know what he's talking about," like his time has passed, he doesn't know how to tell me how to do an arm drag. You know, you take it and like, okay, this is how I need to fix it. This is how I need to do an arm drag from now on. And then like working with Gallows, you know, he helps a lot with getting over as far as match involvement with the crowd and stuff. If you ever work an indie show with Gallows, you're going outside wrestling in the crowd. That's just a given. So I mean, a lot of aspects. And then Marv, he taught me character, and honestly, all of my basics and what I know, because Marv was that ground guy that I paid, and you know, he watched me from first, well, not first bump, but one of my first bumps to first show. So you know, Marv was one of those. He is what taught me a character. If you ever witness Marv in a wrestling match or anything like that, you'll see his gimmick and be like, okay, now let's see what he's talking about. So character work was big with Marv, and that has taken me a long way, as well as the old school stuff I learned with Robert, with the short time I was with him, and then just crowd interaction with Gallows. So realistically, I mean, it's all pieces to the puzzle. Am I going to learn everything that they tell me and do it perfectly? Absolutely not. But at the end of the day, you do your best and just learn.
So, in a short time since you've been in wrestling, and it seems like you've worked a lot of matches. Like your work rate seems to be like through the roof. And I'm
Yeah.
saying that like respectfully. Somebody who taught, like I watch a lot of wrestling. So when I looked up your stuff and I saw how many matches you've worked, I'm like, holy shit, this dude has worked.
Yeah.
When you do that many matches in that short amount of time, though, what's the mental game like? Like kind of throwing yourself into the business. You kind of dove headfirst into it over the last few years.
Yeah. So it's funny you mentioned that because one of the things that Marv told us, and it wasn't like a lecture or anything, it was a take notes of all your matches. He wished when he first started that he would have gotten, you know, from his first match to now, he wished he would have recorded, talked about what he did, maybe how much he got paid during that. And you don't think about it, but I mean, you go from working free shows to, you know, somewhat, I mean, you're not making a killing, but you're making a little bit of money on the weekends. So but that I did do that for my first 2 years, and then my schedule was just so hectic. It was just all right, finish my match, shake everybody's hand after the show, hit the road, wake up the next morning, wash my clothes. Like I honestly regret losing track of how many matches I've had, how many shows I've done. But honestly, the mental game behind it, the first year was rough. Um, but I am one of those. I try my best to remain humble. I try to remain, you know, willing to work with people. And that's gotten me a long way. Respect in this business is going to take you further than doing a 450 or doing a cool move. Because respect is one of those things that last. A move is only something that, okay, you see, and then the next match happens, or the next week a new talent comes in. But the next time I show up at your show, you're going to remember, okay, this guy was a cool guy. This guy was nice to me. This guy respected me. So it's just one of those things. The mental thing is this is a business. It's not a hobby for me. It's on the weekends right now for me because I have a shoot job, but at the same time, this is what I think about 24/7. This is literally while I'm at my office job, my 9 to 5. I think about wrestling. I'm looking at wrestling. I'm sharing posters during the day. Like it's a full time job. And that's how I think of it. And that's how all of us in Exotic Youth think about it. And we put time into what we do. We put effort into what we do. We put passion behind what we do. And we put miles in with what we do. So ultimately, the mental game is don't get caught up in the small things and look at the big picture.
That's a great outlook. Um, One of my interesting questions for you, and I don't usually dive too often into this. I'm curious about your perspective of it, though, given what little bit I know about your career before we started talking. Pre COVID versus post COVID. Like around the time you were breaking into the business, it seemed like that 2020 was like a year and a half, 2 years in for you, right?
Right.
So, like, two totally different worlds, pre COVID versus post COVID. What were some of the biggest differences for you coming out of the pandemic?
Those, and I'm going to call them eras because that's exactly what they are. But those two eras are literally night and day for me. Pre-COVID, Bryce Cannon was the the guy who would go out there, get a reaction, but not a lot of involvement. He wasn't a part of the storylines. He was a spot filler, so the card could have 7 matches. He was on Facebook. He had his haters, but he wasn't making a ripple in a pond at all. No matter how hard he tried. And then right before COVID, I started making a little bit of noise. I started kind of getting out there, and then I dislocated my patella. It took me out for 3 months. It took me out November, January, and February, or November, December, January. February, I come back brand new because I used to work or wrestle in loafers and chubby shorts. I was full gimmick. And then once that knee happened, I said, okay, maybe I need to change things up, get some professional gear. And honestly, I revamped my character. I thought, how can I take what I've made but wear gear, if that makes sense? How do I give that frat look? How do I give that rich, preppy vibe now that I have to kind of wear everything everyone else is wearing? Because no one else was wearing loafers. No one else was wearing chubby shorts. I stood out in that aspect. So that really kind of threw me for a loop there. But what I did was I got me a Letterman's jacket. I bedazzled it out. I figured out a design that was, rich looking and elegant. So I put them on there. I made sure that I had a good gear maker make it. I got nice white boots like the old school guys. And so I came back and, it was a good reception. And then COVID hits. Boom, I get double whammied. So once shows started getting canceled and we realized, okay, COVID's actually going to be a force to be reckoned with, your head gets to turning, okay, how do I fix this? How do I stay relevant? And that's where social media plays a big part. And so once I started my social media game, fans are reacting because of something that I posted on social media at a show. And so, yeah, I mean, it was night and day for me. It was very dark before COVID, and during COVID, a light bulb shined, and Bryce Cannon is born. I mean, let's be honest. After COVID, Exotic Youth formed. Without Exotic Youth, I will be honest, I wouldn't be where I'm at. Zach wouldn't be where he's at. Peps wouldn't be where he's at. Exotic Youth really has helped each and every member.
So looking at character work, this is one of my favorite things. Is a lot of people say they take parts of their everyday life and turn it up to 11. When you were coming out of that COVID era and you were coming in, you were finding your stride with it. What parts of your daily life did you start turning up to 11 to become Bryce Cannon? It could be anything, personality, parts, like
Yeah.
anything.
So my personality versus the Bryce Cannon you see in the ring, our personalities are completely different. I'm very low key on the outside. I'm very laid back. I'm very nonchalant. Like when people watch these podcasts, they're like, "That's not the guy we know," and it's right. This is my everyday life. Like I'm not going to look at somebody who walks by me every day and tell them to shut their mouth or like threaten to hit them. Like it's a character, like you said. So, but I would definitely say like my attitude, because I literally just a lot of people don't know it and they won't say that I am, but I'm an asshole. But I'm an asshole because I'm honest.
We got to wear that proud, man. I say that all the time about myself.
Yeah. Yeah. So honesty. So like if I say something to a person in the crowd, I'm not like, oh, what can I do to get GP'd? It's like, okay, I know this is going to piss this person off, so I'm going to say it. But I'm going to say it because right now I'm a bad guy and I can say it. Like, would I say it in public? No, because it could get me arrested. But I'm getting paid for you to hate me. You bought a ticket for me to say something to you. so you would hate me. So yeah, I mean, and then just my love for wrestling, honestly. That's the characteristic that I bring into it most. I think of a cool idea. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna bring it to a ring. I live and breathe this. So I mean, that's really what I bring to it. I mean, in a way, I turn myself up to 11 like everybody else says, but at the same time, it's like there's polar opposites of me and Bryce Cannon. So, but yeah, I would definitely say my thoughts, and my assholeism.
I can respect that big time. Right around the corner for you, MEW, A Storm is Coming, January, down there in Georgia. You guys got lots of top indie talent coming in. Is this kind of bringing a big fight feel to the locker room when you guys put on a big show like this with so many big indie names, plus you guys, plus everybody else going on? Like, it literally, like, this is a huge, just looking through the card tonight before we got on the air, it's such a big fight. It feels like a big fight to me. How's it feel in the locker room?
Oh yeah, exactly. It feels like a big show, and that's exactly how these shows should feel. Because of those people sitting out in the crowd, this is as close to WWE as they can get, unless they do a house show. So when we bring in these names, when we bring our top talent from the Southeast, this promotion is investing a lot into not only the roster, but this promotion is one that has invested its production value as well. If you watch on the IWN app, you'll see we got the fog machines, we got the lights, we got the screens, we got the nice ring. We actually got pads on the ground around the ring. Where do you see that at an indie show anymore? You don't. We got guardrails. We got guardrails that go around the ring, not only, but have a trail to the entranceway. So it's little things like that that MEW has put in place to make sure that this, not only in the locker room, but to the fans, is an experience in a big show feel. So in the locker room, it's pretty cool to us because we don't see these guys every week like we do some of the others. So some of the names that come in, especially me, like I don't mind talking to them and getting to not know them because I know we're not going to become friends or anything like that. But I like to make them feel welcome. I like to respect them. I like to let them know, like, hey, like if you need anything, just let me know. Uh, but yeah, it's one of those things that is like, okay, this production is investing in what it wants to do. And at the end of the day, it's make money. Everybody, I don't care if you're in the crowd. I don't care if you're behind the camera. Your end of the goal or end of the day goal is to make money. And so when you invest money into a product, you're going to get it. And that's exactly what MEW is doing, is investing in the product. And the talent you see on the card get taken care of. And that's the biggest thing too. So MEW is definitely one of those promotions that Exotic Youth has decided to be loyal to because they have taken care of us, and in return, we want to take care of them.
Okay. MEW is going to be amazing. I'm hyped. I'm going to be at the January show. I'm coming down to Georgia for that
Oh,
weekend.
nice.
So I'm going to be
Nice.
down there live to see you guys go at it. This question, however, you don't have to say any names, no promotions. You don't have to call anybody out. MEW's fire. Mats everywhere, guardrails, gorgeous ring. What's your shittiest show? What's the mud show of mud shows you've been to? You don't have to call anybody out, but I know you have to have one.
Oh no, there are some. You know, it wasn't really a mud show. It was almost like they wanted entertainment there. But I have had a place where me and the other guy had to get dressed behind a food truck. So that was kind of rough. That was rough. And then I would say like AWN was kind of rough. It wasn't a mud show, but it was one of those things. Locker room wasn't all that nice. You put your gear back down. You don't know if a rat's going to run across it. It has happened. So yeah, I would say that. Yeah, but as far as like one with talent, bad talent and stuff like that, there's a few. There's a few in Georgia that I've worked at.
I'm from Nashville, deep Southern roots. I grew up in the '80s watching the Jarretts and Lawlers, and the late days of the NWA. Let's talk about crowds for a minute. Georgia also has a super deep Southern history in professional wrestling. How is it territory to territory down there? Can you tell a big difference when you go from city to city in Georgia?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. You can definitely tell the what we call smart marks from the wrestling fan, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
So when I say like the wrestling fan, I'm talking about they still believe as if wrestling is coming down the chimney and putting presents under their tree.
it's real
They
to me,
believe.
damn it, right?
I've met him several times. He's such a nice guy, by the way. But no, yeah. Rome, Georgia is one of those that if you go, you're gonna feel like you're in the '80s. They are an old school crowd where if you're a heel, you better hope to God that you make it to your car. Whereas, for instance, middle Georgia, I would say, is they want to be your friend. They want to know the inside scoop. They follow you on Facebook, so you guys are friends. You don't have to go by your work name around them type deal. But I don't like that. In my eyes, which this is a lot of people like. Yeah, there are some fans that I've talked to. I've kind of gotten to know over the years, but I value myself as a star. I want to be an appeal to you. I don't want to know how your day was. I could care less. I'm not going to tell you how my day was. I'm not going to respond to your DMs. Like, no, we're not friends. You paid a ticket to see me. I'm not here to be your therapist or talk. Like, you're either going to buy something at my merch table or get moving because there's somebody behind you type deal. And that's what I miss really about wrestling is that a lot of it has become social media killed wrestling. Everybody knows it, but wrestling is one of those things where that word kayfabe, it no longer exists. And so, with that being said, it's like we can still control that. All we have to do is either stay in the back or sell our gimmicks and not tell these people about our everyday lives. Don't, like these fans think they know everything now because you told them, oh yeah, we can go grab dinner after this, yada yada yada. Like don't do that anymore. And so that's what kind of kills the fans to me. But definitely territory to territory, promotion to promotion, there are different fans.
Garage door started opening. That was unexpected. Um, one more question for you before we get ready to wrap up. You've got to head up to Savannah, AEW Dark. What was it like having a chance to knock out time and to do some work with AEW?
And that it was honestly amazing. And it was one of those moments where you always hear soak it in. So even though I know earlier during the whole training portion of the talk, I said, you're not able to soak it all in. You're not able to. That's learning, that's training. But when you're in a moment, you're able to soak things in. You're able to look at your surroundings. So that's literally in that moment of walking through the curtain to the ring, it was going through my head. Soak this in, soak this in, soak this in. So when I got in that ring waiting for the other guys to come down, Butcher, Blade, and Helico, waiting for them to come down, I was just literally looking around the arena because we were semi-main for dark. So the stadium or the arena was practically full. I think they had close to 10, 13,000 people there. I wasn't sure what the count was, but I just remember looking around and just seeing it. And one of the cool things is working in Savannah at a promotion, Coastal Empire Wrestling. We had been there for, I want to say, going on 2 years there. And me and a gentleman by the name of Matt Odom, we had a very big storyline going on. We had just had the blow off to it. And the fans, we had a big crowd. We invested in that. and it brought the crowds. So fast forward to AEW, I walk through the curtain and it's a dark match. I don't get an entrance. I'm a small guy. I'm a nobody. I'm a jobber. I hear, oh shit, it's Bryce Cannon come from the crowd. And I was like, what the hell? Rick Knox looks at me and goes, you know him around here? I said, I guess I am.
That's
And so
awesome.
as I step in the ring, you just hear Bryce Cannon sucks and like chants and stuff. And I was like, all right, this is cool. It just added fuel to the fire. And so like it was just cool to like just stand there and soak it in, like, okay, this is what it's like. This is what I want. This is I've got the view now type deal. Like, yeah, it wasn't a long match or anything like that, but that's not what mattered. I got to wrestle in front of 10,000 plus people. How many people can say that? So it was definitely cool, very humbling, very unexpected. I never thought I would be able to do something like that, even though they use a bunch of indie guys and extra talent and stuff like that. But it was one of those days where I didn't think I was going to get a match. Not everybody that shows up as an extra talent gets a match. And I learned that the hard way, honestly, there. We showed up at the venue at 1 o'clock and they told us, hey, matches will be on the board at 4:30. 4:30 rolls around. We go look. All right, it says Bryce Cannon with a couple other names versus the Dark Order. I said, all right, bet, cool. Let me go grab my bag. I grabbed my suitcase, walked back over to the board to look to see what match number I was going to be, and my name was erased. And I was like, all right, the pit went away. Like, it just dropped in my stomach. I was like an opportunity. They didn't want me type deal. And so they gave me an opportunity to do something else, and that was to assist FTR in a meet and greet, which was cool. I was like, well, cool. I mean, I'm a tag wrestler, so I got to hang out with FTR, and like they talked to me just like a friend and everything. Two of the nicest guys, so it was cool to talk with them. And then I come back, and Jameson, a guy at BGU, one of the guys I tagged with, he said, "Yo, bro, you might want to get dressed. We got a match." And so this was literally about 45 minutes before we had to go out. So I sit there and I get dressed and I text my girlfriend. I'm like, okay, I got a match. And so I just threw my phone down, had to get dressed, bam, bam. And then by the time about an hour, 15 minutes later, I text her, wow, that was fun. And she goes, what the hell, you wrestled? I was like, yeah, it was the craziest experience. I had no time to plan, no time to do nothing. Like I could barely even get nervous. So it was pretty cool.
That's awesome. All right, Bryce. I always close all of my interviews with 5 rapid fire questions, some having to do with wrestling, some not. You ready?
Okay.
Who's your favorite superstar growing up?
The Miz.
Ooh, The Miz. Do you think he's the greatest IC champion of all time?
I think he's the greatest WWE champion of all time.
Agree to disagree, my friend. What's your favorite season?
Ooh, I would say spring.
Do you think a hot dog is a sandwich?
Oh, you bastard. No.
Do you think pineapple goes on pizza?
Yes.
What's your favorite finisher that isn't yours?
My favorite finisher that's not mine. I like Zach Mosley's finisher, the Destino, the Wheel of Fortune, as he calls it. You
Nice.
don't see it used a lot, so.
All right, Bryce. My favorite part of the episode, man. Put yourself over. Tell everybody where to find you, what you've got coming up in the very near future.
Yeah, so you can catch me on social medias. I've got TikTok, I've got Twitter, I've got Instagram. Everything is pretty much Real Bryce Cannon. The Instagram is Real Bryce Cannon with an underscore. Twitter is just Real Bryce Cannon. TikTok is Real Bryce Cannon, I think, with a 40. You can get me on Facebook at just Bryce Cannon. There's a fan page, and then there's also, you can add me as a friend. No, that does not mean we're friends. I am trying the YouTube thing. I'm not the best with technology because schedule's so busy and I forget all the time. So I've got a couple of videos on YouTube, a couple matches, trying out the whole shorts thing. Those have been doing pretty well. And then Pro Wrestling Tees, look up Exotic Youth, myself, Pepper Bottom, and Zach have shirts all on there and a team shirt. So check that out. I'm on Teespring. Just look up Bryce Cannon. Got shirts, hoodies, everything on there. So yeah, and then check us out at any show. I'm always posting on shows that we will be on or want to get on. And so yeah, that's where you can find me.
Excellent, Bryce. I appreciate you stopping by and chatting about some wrestling with me, brother.
Oh yeah, thanks for having me. I'll be waiting for the paycheck in the mail.
The check is in the mail. You can get your, um,
Oh,
I'll be down there on the 28th. I'm super hyped for the show. MEW, A Storm is Coming. For the Frat Daddy, Bryce Cannon, I am the Will Gray. Thanks for stopping by and listening, my people.